on your first witness.
Your Honor, State of Texas calls Alyssa Findley.
Would you please raise your right hand and swear? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
Yes, please.
Good afternoon, Ms. Findley. I guess before we get started, because I want you to talk a little bit about Bo, so that the jury kind of knows a little bit about this man. Let's talk a little bit about you. Tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury a little bit about yourself.
I am a project coordinator for a health insurance company in New York. I am a mother of 3 boys and a member of the Church of Christ.
Okay. And who is Botham John to you?
Botham was my little brother. He was 9 years younger than me. He was my friend. He was my person.
Did you guys always have a very close relationship, or was that something that happened later in life?
I would say we've always had a close relationship because we were raised as a close family. So we were always in contact. We've always maintained a friendship to the point where we were like best friends. Mm-hmm.
How often did you talk to Bo?
I spoke to him almost every day, either by telephone or text message. We always had contact every day.
And I want to take this moment for you to show the jury and tell the jury about his family, his mom. What's his mom's name?
Allison
Allison,
Shaw.
would you stand up, please? And Bo's dad?
Bertram Shaw.
Bertram. And Brant is his younger brother?
Brant Shaw.
Okay. And that's Bo's grandma, right?
Gloria Charles,
Gloria,
yes.
Okay. What kind of, y'all can have a seat, thank you so much. Tell me about the family dynamic. Where did y'all grow up? What was Bo's kind of relationship as, I guess, like a middle-ish child? Tell us a little bit about that.
We grew up in St. Lucia. It's a Caribbean island. Growing up, Botham was always very active. I would say he was a little adventurous. One time, he was at the house and he decided to get on our dog and have the dog run around the house with him like a horse, and he loved it. I was in a panic, but that was the type of person he was. When he started high school, he started a choir at the high school. He also started song leading at our church, Church of Christ, and he fell in love with music. He even wrote songs, church songs. We found 4 songs that he wrote, all about Christ and wanting to get to heaven.
Did Bo have a very close personal relationship with God? Was
He
that
did.
important in his life?
Yes, we grew up in the church. From the womb, we've always been going to church.
How is it that you and Bo, both being from St. Lucia, how did you guys end up here in the States?
I moved when I was 19 to go to school. He took the same path where he applied for Harding University and got accepted and transitioned to America as well.
Okay. So it was an educational opportunity that brought him to this country, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I guess without any further ado, Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Yes.
Alyssa, I want to show you what's been marked for identification as State's Exhibit number 1. Can you tell me who this is in this photograph?
That's Botham.
Okay. And can you tell me when this photograph was taken? Do you know?
I know it was taken at Harding University outside the Rock House. I would say maybe 2014.
Okay. And does this fairly and accurately depict your brother Bo?
Yes.
I offer States 1.
No objection.
It's admitted.
Permission to publish. Bo's got a big smile on his face. Is that uncommon?
No.
Tell me about Bo. Tell me about his, I guess, his demeanor. You know, we have people that we walk through life with that are always serious. We have some angry people. We have happy people. Where did Bo fit on the spectrum?
He was always a happy person. He loved having fun. He was a fun-loving person. Always saw the greener side of everything.
So you said that he was accepted to Harding University. What kind of academic discipline was he interested in?
He graduated with a double major in accounting and management information systems.
And then give us an idea of how his education and then his future career opportunities, how did that kind of unfold for him?
He got accepted to an internship with PwC while he was at Harding here in Dallas. When he came out here, they put him up in a hotel, and he called and FaceTime. He was so excited just to have the opportunity. Then when he got accepted into the internship, he called crying. He was so over the moon. And from that internship, he got hired as an accountant for PwC.
And what is PwC?
PricewaterhouseCoopers is an accounting firm.
Okay. This must have been quite an honor for him. It's a very prestigious firm.
It is, yes.
Was he excited about where his life was going, not only in the church, but also in his career?
Yes, he was very excited. I tried to convince him to move to New York with me, even with PwC, because they're out there as well. But he had a career path in mind, and he wanted to get to a senior level before he transitioned to any other place.
Okay, you wanted him to be close to you.
I did, yes. Because he was my baby brother. I'm a little overprotective of my siblings and my children, so I wanted him close.
And that was that his long-term goal, was to get up there close to you as well?
Not really.
That was more what you wanted.
Right, it was my long-term goal for him, yeah.
Okay, I want to talk a little bit more about the events on September 6th. Did you talk to Bo on September the 6th?
I did. I spoke with him.
What was his general mood? I mean, the rules of evidence, unfortunately, they don't allow you to talk about statements that were made outside of a courtroom. Okay, so I can't ask you what you guys talked about or what he said. Okay. But I want you to tell me, what was his general mood?
He was happy. Can I tell you why?
Well, only if you know from independent reasons. You can't. Let me ask you this: was Bo's birthday coming up soon?
Yes, his birthday was coming up, and he was very excited about that. We went back and forth about presents for about a month. So our conversation was in part about his present for his birthday.
Okay, well, what was it you were planning on getting Bo for his birthday?
Well, I decided, and prior we had a conversation, that I would give him pots and pans because he had only 2 in his apartment. So I wanted to get him a full set because it's the grown-up thing to do. But so he agreed. But when I spoke to him that day, he said he wanted Drake tickets because apparently Drake was in concert at some point. So I told him, well, I thought we agreed that you were going to be a grown-up this year. And he said, okay, fine, yes, get me the pots and pans. So we agreed on that.
You agreed on that?
Yes.
I see. So the pots and pans weren't a huge hit with him initially?
No.
Okay. All right. I do want to talk with you about something a little bit more serious now.
Mm-hmm.
I think that you were made aware that after Bo had been shot, when the police were in his home, they found a baggie of marijuana.
Right.
Were you aware that Bo smoked marijuana?
I was aware.
Can you give the jury an idea why you believe he would partake in marijuana?
While he was at Harding, he was diagnosed with ADHD, and he was prescribed Adderall. And he started taking the Adderall, but he always complained he didn't like how it made him feel. Like, one, he couldn't sleep while he was on Adderall. And then for him to sleep, he would have to stop taking it completely. And then he described it as crashing when he stopped taking it. So it was always back and forth with it. So he stopped taking it completely. and that's when he started smoking.
Okay. Now, listen, I'm not a judge. Right, wrong, or indifferent, this is the reason why he chose to smoke marijuana.
Right.
Was it anything evil on his part, or was this the way in which he felt he medicated himself so that he could cope?
That was his coping.
Okay. So I want to ask you this. Did Bo ever manifest any weird reactions to marijuana, or was it kind of like the typical effect of a person smoking marijuana? I mean, did he turn into a crazy lunatic?
No, he would be mellow. Same Botham, just laughing more, but nothing extraordinary.
Okay. All right, so let's talk about that particular day a little bit more. Do you know what Bo's plans were for that particular evening?
We spoke about, I asked him if he would be watching the football game, because it was the first game of the season, the NFL season, and he thought the season already started, so he was excited that he didn't miss it, because he had a fantasy football league, so it was crucial that he watched the games. So his plan was to stay home and watch that game that night.
Do you know whether or not he had any other plans? I mean, did he have a girlfriend who was staying over or anything like that?
He did not mention that.
Okay. Do you know, was Bo in any kind of a significant relationship at the time?
He started seeing Cynthia, I think her name is, a few weeks before. It wasn't anything serious. It didn't get to that point as yet, and I just know he started seeing a few weeks before.
When did you find out what had happened to Bo?
I received a call from Baylor University Hospital. It was about a little after midnight on the 7th. New York is an hour ahead, so it was after midnight from my time. I received a call from a social worker, and she asked me a few questions. Do I know Botham Ja? What is his date of birth? What is his address? Where does he work? And then she told me that he was brought in with a gunshot wound, and he succumbed to his injuries.
Help us understand, how does a person process that?
At first, I didn't believe it because it was just not anything that I would expect. When I got the call, I thought maybe it was a car accident. So I wasn't expecting to hear that he was shot. I know I just immediately became cold. It just didn't make sense to me.
How long did it take you before you finally accepted the reality that Bo was gone?
Honestly, I don't think I've accepted it as yet. I think it will still take time. Sometimes I have still called his number because he's still in my favorites on my phone. So I've called sometimes just to see if he will answer. So I haven't accepted it as yet.
Do you still miss him?
I miss him every single day. Being in Dallas is hard, that he's not here. So I miss him.
Did you come to Dallas looking for some answers?
I did. I came also looking for closure because I think having this hurdle, just getting over this hurdle will probably lead to healing. So I'm hoping for that this portion to be finally over and done with so my entire family can heal.
Who had to tell Alyssa and Bertram about that?
I did.
Tell me how that went.
I really, when I hung up the phone with the hospital, my first thought was to not tell them, because I wanted, especially my mother, to have just one more good night of sleep before getting the news. but I decided against it. And she was at my house in New York at the time. So I went and I just repeated the words the social worker told me.
I imagine that must have been heart-wrenching for them.
It was. My mom immediately started crying, like just bust out in tears. She started dialing the number for Bertram and the words just couldn't come out. So I took the phone from her and told him again, just repeated the words. I called my aunt, same thing, I just repeated the words because I didn't at the time process the words. So I was just repeating it to them.
I wanted to ask you another question about the police investigation inside Beau's apartment.
Mm-hmm.
They found a series of 3 medications, an anti-nausea, I think an anti-inflammatory, and a pain medication.
Mm-hmm.
Had Beau had any kind of surgical or dental work recently?
Yes, he had a wisdom tooth removed. He was on the plan to have all 4 removed, but they were doing it one at a time. So he had the first one removed a few weeks before that. Mm-hmm.
And has that been kind of a painful process for him?
It was. I know a few days after it happened, the tooth was pulled, he stayed home. He was on a strict liquid diet, well, soups, hot food. So he was eating soups every day. He even took a picture of the Chick-fil-A soup and sent it to me. And that day, September 6th, he finally got the okay to eat ice cream.
Was that good progress for Beau?
Yes, he was very excited about eating ice cream because he loves ice cream. He loved ice cream. Even as a child, we used to call him Milky Way because he just loved eating ice cream. Anything milky, he's all for it.
So September the 6th, 2018 was the day, obviously, that Beau got shot.
Mm-hmm.
Did you meet with a Texas Ranger on Saturday, September the 8th, 2018?
I did.
Okay. And again, I can't ask you to go over the question and answers, but I want to ask you this question.
Mm-hmm.
You were aware that the Texas Rangers had just started the investigation into this particular case, is that right?
Yes.
Was your impression, having talked to the Texas Rangers right after they started this investigation, that they were going to give a fair investigation to Beau?
I did not.
Sustained.
I'll ask the witness.
I have no questions.
They should be excused.
Oh, Judge, actually, may I recall, Ms. Findley had one other matter I wanted to show her. May I proceed?
Yes.
Okay. Alyssa, I'm sorry I forgot about this.
Judge, will stipulate that the autopsy photo is the same as the same individual that's in State's Exhibit number 1. Just will offer that stipulation.
And we'll offer State's Exhibit 2 for all purposes.
Thank you. It's admitted for all purposes.
I have no other questions.
Okay.
No.
Ms. Findley,
Nothing further, Judge.
may she be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
Earlier, you said that you may have some objections to her remaining in the courtroom. Do you still have any objections to
I don't
this?
see any factual, I don't see any basis for that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Findley. You may rejoin your thing.
Your Honor, we call Robert Watson.
Did you say Watson?
Robert Watson, Your Honor.
The testimony you will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
Thank you. Make yourself.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
Please.
Thank you. Good afternoon,
Good afternoon.
Please state your first and last name
Robert Watson,
and spell that for the court reporter.
Watson, Robert, common spelling.
And Mr. Watson, how are you currently employed?
I'm employed as a sergeant with the Dallas Police Department.
And how long have you been with the Dallas Police Department?
14 years.
14 years. And could you introduce yourself to the jury and tell them a little bit about your background and what did you do prior to becoming a police officer?
Prior to becoming a police officer, I was a youth pastor in the Pleasant Grove area. I'm currently assigned to the Southeast CRT Deployment Unit at the Southeast Patrol Division. I've been a supervisor for 7 years, and again, I've been on for 14 years.
And in your 14 years with the Dallas Police Department, Sergeant, what other assignments have you held?
Prior to being the CRT supervisor, I was a patrol sergeant. Prior to that, I was assigned to the South Central CRT unit as an officer, and then I was a patrol officer at the South Central Division and the Central Division before completing my police academy with the Dallas Police Department.
And you just mentioned the police academy. My next question is, what is your training and experience to become that led you to becoming a sergeant over CRT?
So I attended the Dallas Police Academy and completed that back in 2005. Every 2 years, we do 40 hours of update training. When I promoted to sergeant, I attended a 6-week supervisory course through the Caruth Police Institute, and it's continued update training annually.
Continual training annually?
Yes, ma'am.
And Sergeant Watson, with CRT, is there any specialized training that your unit undertakes?
CRT mainly, that's different from patrol officers. CRT gets one main training course, which is arrest warrant execution, and that's a 2-day class, 16 hours. The SWAT unit puts on that training. That's mainly the only training that we have that is different from the patrol officers, outside of covert surveillance training also, and that's a 2-day, 16-hour class.
And CRT, that's the crime response team, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And is it under the patrol division?
It is.
And Sergeant, would you tell us a little bit about what do you do in CRT?
So the crime reduction team, at that time, there were 2 crime reduction teams per patrol division. Each team is comprised of 6 either senior corporals and or police officers. The one CRT team will work usually between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. and then the second one will work between 8 p.m. and 4 a.m. And what our responsibilities included, it was multifaceted, but the main things we dealt with were narcotics complaints, and those complaints could come from several places, including the division commander, the city council, citizens will call in complaints, and we'll check on those. We also executed arrest warrants. We got those mainly from our investigative unit at each station, which could include burglaries or BMVs. We would also work with outside units, including, DEA task force, ATF, the FBI. We work with municipalities that border our channel, and we'll assist them with any crime trends that are occurring in their city and our city that match. Those are the main things that we do on a regular basis.
And what, if you would explain to the jury, would a typical or a usual day for a CRT member consist of?
Once we come in, we usually have a detail that could be 10 to 15 minutes. People, the members will apprise each other of what they're working on or what's going on. Once you do that, there's reports that have come in overnight or the week. They'll do research. They'll go out in the field and conduct surveillance. They'll make traffic stops. They'll look for wanted fugitives, and that's kind of a daily basis thing.
And Sergeant, how many members, going back to September 6, 2018, about how many members were on the unit that you supervised?
If I recall correctly, I think there were 5 at the time. I think we were short 1.
And can you please state their names for the jury?
It was Martin Rivera, Amber Guyger, Justin Hellengard, Thomas McPherson, and William Bruce.
And Sergeant Watson, so you were Defendant Guyger's supervisor, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you see the defendant here in the courtroom today?
Yes, ma'am.
Would you please identify the defendant by an article of clothing?
She has a blue shirt on.
We'll let the record reflect that this witness has identified the defendant in court.
Sergeant, let's go back. So you said you had 5 members on the team back in September 6th of 2018,
Yes, ma'am.
and you were short a person.
I believe so.
And what's the criteria to become a member of the CRT unit?
Since it's an interview position, we look for character, integrity, work ethic. We also look for officers who are team players and work well with others. Officers who are responsible, have a good base for foundation for report writing, and know search and seizure law.
And is there a time requirement in terms of, do you have to have so many years with the Dallas Police Department to be considered for the CRT unit?
No, ma'am.
And or typically though, do you take officers right out of the academy?
No, ma'am.
So explain to the jury, how does that work?
Once an officer leaves the academy, they'll be on field training, and that lasts for, I believe, 24 weeks still. Once they're off field training, they'll have a probationary period where they'll ride with a officer who has been on for several years. And then once they're off probation, then they can apply for a CRT or deployment or any other position.
And how often are spots available in the CRT unit?
A CRT is a stepping stone for officers to move from patrol to an investigative bureau or any other bureau within the department. So we do have some turnover, but that's just to get them to the next step.
And with respect to the defendant, were you a part of the interview team that interviewed the defendant for consideration for your division?
Yes.
Please explain to the jury how that process worked.
Officers have a specific period of time to notify once a job is posted within the department. When they notify a supervisor, then the job posting will close. Then the officer will have to gather whatever necessary materials that the supervisor suggests they need in order to interview. The interview is a panel of 3 sergeants. Sometimes the lieutenant will sit in, and every officer is asked the same question. The responses are taken into consideration, and they also submit a resume. And that's how the process goes. Once the interviews are over, several names are usually chosen and forwarded up the chain, and the chain of command will make a decision on who is going to take the spot.
And were you familiar with Defendant Guyger prior to the interview process for your CRT team?
Just a little bit.
And with the interview process with Defendant Guyger, I guess would you say that she was highly capable and competent?
Absolutely.
And that, I guess what you knew of her prior to her interview is that, did you believe she would be a good fit for your team?
I did.
And when we're talking about CRT, these are experienced officers. Are they proactive?
Absolutely.
And in terms of proactive, does that mean having to go out and kind of drum up your own work?
Yes, ma'am.
Please explain to the jury exactly what that means in terms of drumming up your own work.
So that would go back to researching prior offenses that have come in, looking for wanted fugitives who have an arrest warrant out for them, and we can't find them, or somebody hasn't picked them up yet and brought them to Lew Sterrett. Those are the kind of things, or narcotics locations. If a citizen calls in and says this place is selling narcotics, then you have to go out and be able to determine whether or not that is actually taking place.
And do CRT members answer calls for service, like over dispatch?
They do. When the call load is backed up, they'll answer calls. If there are hot calls, which are priority 1 calls that are robberies in progress, things where people need help right away, then we will definitely answer those kind of calls.
So is it fair to say that CRT assists with the high-risk sort of crimes, or
Yes,
more
ma'am.
violent crimes?
Yes, ma'am.
Sergeant Watson, would you please explain to the jury, back in September of 2018, what was the focus of the CRT unit right around the time of September 6th?
The
task and what were you guys working on?
The CRT team was assisting the SWAT team with some, I believe, robbery suspects. I can't remember the location, but there had been several robberies in the Southeast Division, and that was their mission for the time.
And were these robbery suspects, had they been problematic? Were they violent in the area?
Yes, ma'am.
And was there a high priority to assist SWAT with apprehending the suspects?
Yes, it's always priority to assist our other units.
And is it common for CRT to work with SWAT on these sort of, I guess, missions or assignments, if you will?
Yes, ma'am.
And on September 6th, did SWAT ask for CRT to assist them with some robbery suspects?
I'm not sure how it unfolded that day, but at some point, yeah, they requested assistance, and the CRT team went out there.
And the members of the CRT team, did that include the defendant?
Yes, ma'am.
And is it your understanding that they did respond to assist SWAT that day?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you know which perimeter were they working?
I believe they were working the perimeter right out to aside the location.
And so would that be the outer perimeter?
Yes, ma'am.
And were you at the scene that day?
I was not.
Okay. Were you aware of the assignment and what was going on?
Yes, ma'am.
And how does that work? How do you receive a notification of what actually is occurring? Because at some point there were some suspects that were arrested, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And were you notified of that?
Yes, ma'am.
And then what is your role and capacity at that point?
So at that point, that's a SWAT operation. So the SWAT commander is out there, and they'll handle all of that. We just assist. So there's not really a need for 2 or 3 supervisors out there to control that situation.
And how would you describe your team back on September 6, 2018? Were you guys a close-knit team?
I believe everybody worked very well together. They worked good together, and they were very proactive. They worked hard together, and I never really had any problems with anybody.
Okay. And did anyone have any problems with you?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Did anyone ever express any feelings that maybe you didn't have their back or support them?
Not that I'm aware of.
And did you feel that way about any member of your team, that they weren't pulling their weight?
Absolutely not.
Sergeant Watson, what are, if you could explain for the jury, what are general orders of the Dallas Police Department?
A brief description would be general orders are the rules and regulations that tell officers what they can and can't do for the Dallas Police Department.
And would it be fair to say that there are numerous rules and regulations when it comes to the general orders?
Yes, ma'am.
And what are standard operating procedures or patrol procedures?
So the operating procedures are going to be a little more specific, and they're going to tell officers how they should respond to specific calls and deal with certain incidents. And they even have maybe the structure and responsibilities of different units within the department.
And is it fair to say that in regards to the crime response team, or CRT as it's known, that there is also a specific SOP related to your unit, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And within that, it kind of, as you stated, listed out the rules and regulations, but also in terms of how the sergeants and senior corporals and your duties and responsibilities.
Yes, ma'am.
Permission to approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Sergeant, I'm showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit number 22. Here, I'll have to let you take a look at that. And are you familiar with States 22?
Yes, ma'am.
And what is this, Sergeant?
It's a copy of the Dallas Police General Orders and Patrol SOP.
And Sergeant, is it fair to say, I know that we mentioned earlier, but there are hundreds of pages of these general orders and SOPs, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And in a simplified form, we put them on a CD, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And have you had an opportunity to actually review this CD?
Yes, ma'am.
And these do in fact contain the general orders and the SOPs of the Dallas Police Department as they existed back in 2018.
Yes, ma'am.
At this time, Your Honor, I would like to offer State's Exhibit number 22. It is under Business Records Affidavit. I'm going to go ahead and tender it to the defense for an objection.
We object to it. It's we're talking about hundreds of pages of material that's going to confuse the jury. This incident was not an on-duty incident.
Can you speak up just a little bit?
We're going to object to it. It's several hundred pages of information that is not relevant. It's going to confuse and mislead the jury. This situation of the incident which occurred was Ms. Guyger was off duty at the time of the incident.
Right. Ma'am.
Response, Your Honor.
Yes.
I'm not asking to publish all of the hundreds of pages, Your Honor. I mean, this is the general orders and the SOPs, our business record that is authenticated by an accompanying business records affidavit. And I can assure to the court I'm not going to publish all hundreds of pages. There are some specific ones that I can publish.
Do you intend to use
I
specific-
do, yes, Your Honor. I would like to, and I have them marked, States Exhibit 23, 312, 313, and 314. That is going to be the CRT.
Are you offering States 21 for all purposes or just record purposes?
At this time, Your Honor, I can offer States 22, I believe, for record purposes. And then I will offer States Exhibit 23, States Exhibit 312, States Exhibit 313, and States Exhibit 314 for all purposes. And I'm tendering those to the defense counsel.
All
And
right,
those are the,
Before we go to those, States Exhibit 22 will be admitted for record purposes. And what were the ensuing numbers that you gave?
312, Your Honor,
312,
313, and 314. And States Exhibit number 23.
did you say no objection?
No objection to 312, 313, 314, and 23.
They're all admitted for all purposes.
Thank you, Your Honor. Information approaching in, Your Honor.
Yes.
And Sergeant Watson, I'm going to show you again. Take a look at States Exhibit number 23. And what is States Exhibit number 23, Sergeant?
It is the SOP for the crime reduction team.
Okay, and that sets out all the rules and procedures for your unit.
Yes, ma'am.
And can you take a look at States Exhibit number 312?
Yes, ma'am. It's the SOP for the burglary in progress.
And what is that actual SOP number?
1509.
And could you read that title as well?
Yes, ma'am. Burglary in progress, burglar alarm, open building.
And what is States Exhibit number 312 related to, or what does that mean?
That gives the officer directions on how the best way to answer a burglary in progress, burglar alarm, or open building is to be conducted.
And what is States Exhibit number 313?
That is the standard operating procedure for barricaded persons, 1001.
And what is the purpose of 1001?
That sets forth the operating procedure for responding to a barricaded person.
And then lastly, what is States Exhibit number 314?
That is standard operating procedure 1602 K9 use, and that is the operating procedure to use K9 in different circumstances.
Okay. Now, Sergeant Watson, what, in your opinion, would you say is the purpose of these general standard operating procedures and the general orders?
Those are the best practices when answering those specific kind of situations.
And best practices, what do you mean by the best practices?
Generally, the years and years of doing something, you refine it and revise it so that it's the best way to do it, tactically, manpower-wise.
And would you say that these rules, are they designed for officer safety?
Yes, ma'am.
And I guess subsequently the safety of the public as well?
Yes, ma'am.
And going back to States Exhibit number 312, which talks about the burglary in progress, burglar alarm, and open building calls, also known as SOP 1509. In CRT, do you have a lot of situations to where officers are responding to burglary calls or open building?
Sometimes.
And what is the procedure for those calls? How should they be handled?
Generally, a two-man will answer that call. during the day and during night hours are totally different because you have to use your lights on your car, you have flashlights and other things that you have to use. Generally, you look for if there has been entry made into whatever location you're looking for. If there has been, then you have several options open to you as far as calling for more officers, setting a perimeter so that if the person is in the location, they can't get away. You also have the option to call for a K-9 to search a large building, or for Air 1, which is our police helicopter, to check a roof to make sure nobody's on top hiding. That's kind of the short version.
And thank you for that. Now, earlier you said that typically you work in teams or two-man teams. What's the purpose for that?
So it just depends on who's there that day. We ride one-man and two-man. There's no requirement to ride two-man, but when we're working on something together, then we try to make it more than just one man.
Is it safety in numbers?
Yes, ma'am.
If you have a partner, is there someone available to kind of cover you or watch your back?
Yes, ma'am.
And vice versa?
Yes.
With SOP 1509, I know it says that you have a partner. If you find yourself in a building and it looks as if there's been entry, that you have various options. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And I believe you stated one of those options is you can call for backup.
Yes, ma'am.
If you have a partner, you can, I guess, an area of, if you realize that someone's inside of the building or the habitation, and you can either call for a K-9 that can assist you with the building search at that point, or what happens if you find someone in a home and you aren't able to communicate with them? What's another, how should an officer handle that situation?
As far as them not being able to hear you, because you can always loud hail them on your squad car speaker.
So you can use the squad car speaker. That's correct. So let's say if they aren't following your commands.
If they're not following your commands, then you would treat it as a barricaded person.
And when we say a barricaded person, because I know we have a separate standard operating procedure for that than we do from the burglary open door call, what makes barricaded persons special?
You have to notify SWAT.
Okay.
And they'll come out and respond.
And in that situation, if you have a barricaded person, what should that initial responding officer do? What is their focus at that point in time?
Is to maintain a perimeter and block any routes of escape.
Can you, so maintaining that perimeter, would it be one of a mission of containment at that point, if you will?
Yes, ma'am.
Until backup arrives?
Yes, ma'am.
Would they take cover or even conceal themselves?
Yes, cover and concealment. Cover is hard cover in case they have a weapon. You can get in front of something that would stop a bullet. Concealment is just hiding behind something but still keeping eyes so that you can see if they're trying to make an escape.
So concealment, you can hide your person but not necessarily protect your body should something come through whatever you're hiding behind.
Yes, ma'am.
And so you've got the options. You work in two-man teams. Now, earlier you also mentioned the use of lights. Why is lighting important?
So you can see what's going on.
Okay. I mean, that would make sense, wouldn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
So you call for cover. You either get yourself in a position to where you're safe while you're waiting for your backup to arrive. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
If it's a barricaded situation, you're going to call for SWAT and again get to a perimeter where you're safe. If it's a situation where you feel like you might need to call in the K-9s or Air 1, you could do that?
Yes, ma'am.
I want to ask you about the SOPs for CRT. I know you stated earlier that the only really specialized training is maybe a couple of day course that you do. Is that course taught by SWAT?
Yes, ma'am.
And in that, do you do drills for open door building searches?
Arrest warrant execution, not so much open building, but we treat them fairly the same.
You're treated the same?
For the most part.
And why?
Because you're looking for somebody. If you're executing an arrest warrant, you're looking for a wanted fugitive. In open building, you're going to be safe also, but you're clearing a building is what you're doing with an open building.
I guess if it's safe to say you don't know what you're walking into, it's best to be prepared.
That's it.
Before you head in.
Yes, ma'am.
And in the drills that are done, I guess through that course by SWAT, are the officers paired in teams?
It's a group, usually five officers and a supervisor.
Okay. And, or I guess, are they putting into practice what's detailed in these SOPs in the general orders of working with a partner, maintaining cover?
Some of the tactics are the same, yes.
Okay. What is a tactical retreat?
Is to safely remove yourself from a situation.
Now, is that to say that you just like turn around and run away?
No, ma'am. You retreat to a perimeter, is what it basically means.
Okay, retreat to a perimeter. And again, the perimeter is an area, I guess, that's kind of away from wherever the threat may possibly be.
Cover concealment.
But under concealment, where the officers can safely maintain a position until additional backup arrives.
Yes, ma'am.
Give me just a moment. Sergeant Watson, in your years, I believe earlier you stated it's been about 6 years since you've been a sergeant over a CRT division.
Yes, ma'am.
Have you had situations to where officers, members of your team have come to you and said, I'm just too exhausted and too tired to work?
They'll ask for days off.
And what do you do in those situations?
For the most part, we allow it.
You allow it, okay. Would it be a responsible thing for a supervisor to address that issue?
Yes, ma'am.
Have you ever had a situation to where you felt like a member of your team was unfit for duty?
No.
Okay. And that's within your 6 years. You never had someone too tired to where you felt that they were a danger to the public to continue working?
No.
If you did have a situation as such, how would you address it?
Do my best to allow them to go home or go back to the station.
Do you make use of relief officers when you can?
Yes.
And in fact, on September 6, 2018, for a couple of the members of your team, they had other, I guess, events that they needed to get to. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And so other members of your team were covering for them?
Yes, ma'am.
Just a moment, Sergeant. Commissioner Approach, Your Honor.
Yes.
Well, Sergeant, this isn't marked as a state's exhibit yet, but I want you to take a look with that and tell me if you're familiar with that.
Yes, ma'am.
And is that a section that's found within the general orders of the Dallas Police Department,
Yes, ma'am. It's part of the code of conduct.
the code of conduct? And what exactly does the code of conduct, in your own words, what's the purpose of the code of conduct?
To spell out how an officer should carry themselves and act.
And Sergeant Watson, are you familiar with a rule or a general order in the code of conduct that deals with officers being off duty?
I'm not sure I know which one you're referring to.
I know there's quite a few of them, but is there a rule that states that officers are always considered on duty even when off duty?
Yes, ma'am.
And is the purpose of that rule to protect life and property?
Yes, ma'am.
And what else do you know about that rule?
I'm not sure what you want me to expound on.
Well, just your knowledge of what does that rule mean to you?
That you always have to carry yourself as professional and conduct your business appropriately. If you're off duty and something occurs, then you have an obligation to call 911, report something that occurs.
Are there any different rules saying that, I guess, or any different procedures as to, based on training and experience that an officer receives that says if you're off duty, you should act differently than when you're on duty?
Not that I recall.
In that professional rules of conduct, it's actually titled Professional Conduct and Personal Bearing. Is that correct in the general orders?
Yes, ma'am.
And I know, and I've got it now. It's going to be marked as State's Exhibit number 315. And if it's helpful, I can bring it back up to refresh your
Yes,
memory.
ma'am, if you could.
Would that be helpful?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Would a violation of the rules, though, be considered a dereliction of duty?
It could be, yes.
And so I'm going to bring it back up here to refresh your memory. And at this time, it is marked as State's Exhibit number 315. And you let me know after you read it. You finished, Sergeant?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Now, exactly what is the title of State's Exhibit 315?
It is going to be, Your Honor, Professional Conduct and Personal Bearing.
And your objection to that exhibit is what?
Your Honor, it's irrelevant to what happened. They're trying to introduce some sort of administrative violation into the evidence. That's irrelevant to the case.
I'm sorry, but I'm going to need you to speak up just a little bit. I don't know if my ears are clogged, but I don't want to guess at what it is you're saying.
Ma'am, I believe it's irrelevant. They're trying to introduce an administrative violation into the case. That's not relevant to the case.
Judge, that's not what we're trying to do at all. Your Honor, two things. Mr. Snyder said in a speaking objection that, you know, very clearly this was off-duty and therefore the general orders don't apply in his objection to our admission of that. But secondarily, Your Honor, we're not looking to show conformity with a bad act. The orders of the Dallas Police Department say in relevant part, for the purposes of protecting life and property, officers will always be considered on duty while in the city of Dallas and shall be prepared to act to the extent possible anytime circumstances indicate their service is required. The above enforcement action will not include enforcement of Class C misdemeanors, and it goes on to talk about for traffic offenses. So an off-duty officer need not go on duty pursuant to his obligations according to DPD for that, or for enforcement responsibilities beyond the ability of the officer when he is not armed. Amber Guyger was armed. We're going to prove that. This indicates that as soon as Mr. Rogers gave an opening statement in which he said that she believed that there was an intruder in her home, that means that she is now on duty according to the orders and the standard operating procedures of the Dallas Police Department, and she should have been governed by what she was taught. That again goes to the circumstances she finds herself in and whether she acted reasonably. For all purposes.
315.
315.
Which one of you are going to speak?
I'm going to give Mr. Mullin.
It's also improper character trait evidence. They're trying to say that because she didn't conform with an administrative procedure, that makes it relevant to whether she is guilty of the indicted offense. So
I'm not going to make that conclusion that that's what it is they're trying to say. I think this door was opened when your co-counsel mentioned that she was in fact off duty. From what I'm listening, that's how I'm hearing how we started down this road. And Sergeant Watson has testified that a DPD officer is in fact on duty at all times, and I believe the state was just entering into evidence their policies and procedures that state the same thing. So, and just so we're clear, I am not a fan of speaking objections. I need you to stand up, state your legal objection, and be done with it. Because all kinds of invited error happen when we have speaking objections, including you arguing before this jury that Ms. Guyger was in fact off duty when this happened. And she was, but she is also a Dallas police officer. So what is your objection to State's Exhibit 315?
Again, Your Honor, it's irrelevant to the other policies that they introduced. If they want to try to hold her to the policies that they've already introduced into evidence, then they have the ability to do that. Now it's irrelevant whether or not there's a code of conduct that they're going to try to prove that she's violated the code of conduct by not following these other policies, which we certainly don't agree were applicable in the situation.
I don't know if I can jump that far. I certainly think that that would be a question that would be objectionable. But I'm going to overrule your objection to State's Exhibit. Are you
315.
even offering 315?
Yes, Your Honor, we're offering 315 for all purposes.
I'm going to overrule your objection to State's Exhibit 315. Is there anything else that we need to take up before we bring the jury back in?
Judge, there is a quick matter. Did you have something?
No, just make sure this is admitted, Judge. I didn't hear that part.
Yes.
Thank you.
Judge, just so that we don't have to take another break in between for the next witness, I believe that discussions with the defense during the break, the state is going to offer State's Exhibit 3 and 307 into evidence. These are going to be extracts from the phone dump of Amber Guyger for the date of...
Let me get these numbers. 3,
Yes.
and what might 3 be?
3 is going to be the timeline, the extract of her records in their entirety for September the 6th, 2018. Yeah, that's correct. 307, Your Honor, is...
From her phone?
Yes, ma'am. 307 is going to be just those for which she had conversations with Martin Rivera.
Is 303 offered for what purposes?
It's
For
going to
record?
be, no, ma'am, 3 and 307 for all purposes, and I believe we have a
How far into the evening does this timeline extend?
I believe it extends until midnight, but I'd have to take a look at the records.
Does that encompass the conversations that she allegedly had with her sister?
No, ma'am, I don't believe so.
Because it wasn't clear to me which day that might have taken place.
No, that was out.
And when you say the phone records concerning her and Mr. Rivera, does 307 encompass the text as well as the time frame of the telephone conversation?
Yes, ma'am, it does. 307 and 3 would cover both, in both of those. Anything, 3 would cover the entire day, because it also includes location data. 307 is just extracting from 3 just the specific text messages and interactions over the phone with Martin Rivera.
All of them?
Well, the ones that we were able to recover, Your Honor. These were all deleted, as the court is aware, and we had to go through a process to try and recover them. These were the text messages and the information that we were able to recover. I simply can't tell the court that it's all of them because I don't know.
These are what you all have agreed to?
Well, I didn't, let's just, 307. Our agreement was that we're not contesting, these are texts between her and Martin Rivera. We're, for 307, we are objecting under, that they're not relevant pursuant to Rule 401. The probative value far outweighed by the prejudicial effect on Rule 403. It is an improper stretch use of 3836. It's improper character evidence under 404A and 404B1, and it's a misleading or improper way to use Rule 404B as absence of mistake or lack of accident. It doesn't speak to that. And so for 307, we object for those reasons.
Those are the same reasons that
Right,
were
I'm just reading
attached
for the
to
record.
your motion and limited.
Yes, Your Honor.
Those objections will be overruled, and the same limitations apply.
I understand.
And Judge, we just ask for a running objection to any, so I don't have to object every time, for everything in reference to any text messages that are the subject of State's Exhibit 307, we'd ask that a running objection to that.
You may have a running objection to 307. Those are the phone records allegedly between the defendant and Mr. Rivera.
Yes, Your Honor.
You may resume.
Thank you, Your Honor. Sergeant Watson, I believe when we left off, we were talking about State's Exhibit number 315, and which is titled Professional Conduct and Personal Bearing. And so just to confirm, you stated in this general order of the Dallas Police Department, 4.1.H, that officers are always considered on duty. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, that's what it says.
And then going back to State's Exhibit number 312, which is Standard Operating Procedure 1509, burglary in progress, burglar alarm, open building, that we spoke about earlier. In this SOP, would you agree with me, Sergeant, that it lists at least 4 separate occasions where it states that officers are to pair off with a partner,
Yes, ma'am.
that they are to utilize their lights,
Yes, ma'am.
that they are to use cover and or concealment depending on the situation,
Yes, ma'am.
that they are to consider a tactical retreat depending on the situation.
Yes, ma'am.
And again, all of these things are for officer safety, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And that if there is a situation to where it looks like entry has been made, you can either treat it as a barricaded person, which means you're going to call for SWAT,
Yes, ma'am.
and then it becomes a situation of containment and maintaining a perimeter until the additional officers arrive. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And Sergeant Watson, do you know if the defendant had a take-home radio?
Every officer is assigned a radio.
Every officer is assigned one?
Yes, ma'am.
And is it common practice are those radios always charged?
Generally, yes.
Generally? And at headquarters, I know that officers, there's a place for them to charge their body cams, is that correct?
That I couldn't answer.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
But are there charges for the radios at the headquarters?
When you're assigned a radio, you're given your own personal charger. So if you're looking for a charger at headquarters, it would have to be somebody else's personal charger.
Okay, but are a lot of charges at headquarters though?
I honestly don't know, ma'am. I don't work down there, so
Okay. So that's like main headquarters?
that's
So
main
at your
headquarters.
station, though-
I have a charger on my desk.
Okay, and so at your station, do you have chargers?
Yes, ma'am.
Pass the witness.
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry.
Sergeant Watson, you spoke about Amber Guyger was selected for the CRT that she had been interviewed, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you were part of that interview process?
Yes, sir.
And the criteria that you spoke about, she met your criteria?
Yes, sir.
And the rest of the panel? Correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, the CRT team, what are the normal work hours for the CRT?
At that time, it was 8 a.m. to 4 p.m.
Back in September of last year?
Yes.
Was it common for members of the CRT to work overtime?
Yes, sir.
Was it predictable?
It's never predictable.
And is that unpredictable because of the nature of the job, chasing dangerous criminals?
Yes, sir.
Now, you spoke a little bit about the SWAT team on September the 6th using CRT, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And is it your understanding that the SWAT team was involved in arrest of some robbery suspects? Correct?
Yes, sir.
And is it also your understanding at some point after the arrest, the SWAT team was done and the suspects were in custody, correct?
Yes, sir.
The SWAT team, is it your understanding the SWAT team was done for the day, but the CRT team had to keep the suspects in custody at headquarters?
Yes, sir.
And then SWAT team's done, who takes over at that point?
CRT handles it.
Is somebody at headquarters also working the case?
The investigators, yes.
So SWAT goes, now investigators are working it, but CRT is constant throughout the ordeal, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, you were asked some questions about some of the various policies of the department. For instance, you were asked about 1509 regarding burglary in progress.
Yes, sir.
All that. And you stated that these are best practices of the department, correct?
Yes, sir.
Are those best practices about the use of the lights, the use of a partner? You're speaking specifically about officers who are responding to dispatch calls, correct?
Yes, sir.
And are you pretty familiar with 1509?
Fairly, yes, sir.
Okay. Are you familiar with the part of 1509 at the beginning of the policy that says always be prepared for a possible ambush?
Yes, sir.
And this is about ambush when officers respond to a burglary call, correct?
Yes, sir.
Is that because officers are prepared or trained to expect a dangerous situation if there's a burglary in progress?
Yes, sir.
Now, there's other contingencies, barricaded person, use of canine. Those are all part of the best practices for officers responding to dispatch calls, for officers responding to dispatch calls. Is that correct? And the officer is attacked.
Yes, sir.
there's the other contingencies in the police department's general orders and standard operating procedures. They don't negate an officer's right to self-defense, do they?
Not that I'm aware of.
And you're familiar with the way that officers are trained and CRT officers are trained, correct?
Yes, sir.
And they're trained, as part of their training with the Dallas Police Department, they're trained in self-defense, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Including through the use of a firearm, correct?
Yes, sir.
Pass it.
Briefly, Your Honor. Sergeant Watson, where are officers trained to shoot an individual?
At the Firearms Training Center?
And where on an individual's person
Oh, I'm
are they
sorry.
trained to shoot them?
In their torso, I'm sorry.
In their torso?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that also considered center mass?
Yes, ma'am.
No further questions, Your Honor. Pass the witness.
Did you have Reed?
No,
Did you
ma'am.
have further cross?
Pass it.
May you be excused? Would you like the subject to recall?
Subject to recall, I know he has some trip issues, I don't want to interfere with that, but just, well, just to have us the opportunity to recall him just in case and subject to the rule.
All right, so Sergeant Watson, you certainly understand that there may be a need to recall you to the witness stand. And so please don't discuss your testimony with any other persons and don't do so with anyone except the attorneys. And make certain you're outside the presence of any other witnesses.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Did you have another witness for today available?
Got plenty, Judge.
All right, well, bring one on in.
State calls Martin Rivera.
We gotta take advantage of all the time we have. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you. Please make yourself comfortable.
Thank you.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
Yes, please.
Officer Rivera, would you please introduce yourself to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury?
Martin Rivera. I'm a police officer with the Dallas Police Department, and I currently work out of the Southeast Patrol Division.
Okay, and I'm going to ask you either pull that microphone a little bit towards you. We've got jurors all the way down here. I want to make sure they hear you, and you may want to speak up just a little bit, okay?
Okay.
All right, how long have you been with the Dallas Police Department?
16 years.
All right, and are you currently assigned within the crime response team?
That's what it's called. No, I'm not.
Okay, where are you now?
I work Southeast Patrol on the day shift.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about the crime response team for the time period that you were on it. Tell me a little bit about the unit.
When I was on it, some of our responsibilities were locating and apprehending wanted fugitives, investigating street-level narcotics complaints, following certain crime trends. For example, if there was a rash of robberies in a certain area, then we would target the area and take enforcement. There's times when if it was called, We'd work in a covert capacity and surveil target houses, wanted fugitives.
How long were you on CRT?
About 5 years.
And is overtime regular and common on CRT?
Yes.
Tell me about Amber Guyger. First of all, do you see her in the courtroom today?
Yes.
Please point to her and tell me what she's wearing.
Blue dress.
Let the record reflect the witnesses identify the defendant in open court. When did she join CRT?
I believe it was early 2017.
And when did you become partners with her?
Maybe around spring 2017, maybe the summer of that same year.
And did you guys end up becoming fairly regular two-man unit partners while you were on duty?
A lot of the times we were, yes.
Okay. And you have a great deal of respect for her, is that correct?
Yes.
And I believe that she also likes you very much. You guys develop a close relationship as partners, is that fair to say?
Yes.
All right. And let's talk now specifically about September the 6th, 2018. Did you work with her that particular day?
Yes.
Okay, and your regular hours are 8 to 4?
Yes.
So you guys were made aware that there was going to very likely be an overtime situation because of assistance with SWAT.
Yes.
All right. Were you able to, I guess, agree with, or did you have a problem with working the overtime hours on that particular day?
There was a conflict on my end, so I wasn't able to work I worked overtime, just not the full overtime shift that the other guys worked.
Okay, so you left before 6 p.m., is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Was this going to be a personal event that you wanted to attend?
Yes.
What about Amber Guyger? I'd like you to tell me a little bit about her on that particular day. Did Amber Guyger seem to have her faculties about her?
Yes.
All right. Did she seem to be alert and aware of what was going on around her that day?
To my knowledge, yes.
All right. Well, I'm asking you, did she show any obvious deficiencies?
None that I saw, no.
Okay. Did she seem to have the ability to see with her eyes?
Yes.
Was she able to read like license plates? Did you see any kind of vision issues that caused you any concern?
I didn't see any.
All right. Did she complain of being ill?
No.
Did she complain of having any kind of undue stress in her life?
No.
Did she complain of being tired when she got on duty?
No.
All right. Did she look like she did normally?
Yes.
All right. So let me just ask it like this. Was there anything obvious about her, either her appearance or her affect, that caused you some concern that she wasn't on her game on that day like she always is?
There was nothing that caused me any concern. No.
Did she seem to be handling her business in an appropriate way that day?
Yes.
Did she seem to be remarkably absent-minded for any reason?
No.
Okay. Did she complain to you about any kind of physical ailments that she was going through?
No.
Did she complain to you about any kind of fatigue,
No.
memory loss,
No.
any undue stress in her life that was interfering with her on this particular day?
No.
Okay. So in the morning, you guys were doing kind of business as usual in CRT.
Yes.
Was she acting appropriately for whatever calls you were taking or any actions that you were doing?
Yes.
All right. I think that, as I understand the timeline, about noon or so, you guys went to the central substation to get briefed. Is that right?
Yes.
And who was giving the briefing?
The Dallas Police SWAT unit.
The SWAT officers?
Yes.
CRT, can you tell the jury why CRT was asked by SWAT to assist with that?
Well, a lot of times when it covers our division, the Southeast Division, they'll call us. And for that, for that specific warrant, it had been a group of suspects who had committed 20 some odd aggravated robberies. And we had apprehended 2 of them 2 days prior to that in North Dallas, and So we were kind of familiar with some of the suspects that they were going after. So that's another reason why they asked us to assist.
And you guys had an interest in catching those folks, just like SWAT did, didn't you?
Yes.
All right. So this briefing that happened at the Central Station, were you made aware that SWAT was going to be going into a residence, and hopefully they were going to find those actors there?
Yes.
Okay. CRT, what was CRT's role as far as this operation is concerned?
For that operation, our responsibility was just to remain on the perimeter, make sure no one entered the perimeter, and to make sure if any suspects ran from the location, obviously that would be our responsibility as well.
Okay. Did anything like that happen?
No.
SWAT rather quickly, and this is a testament to them. They were able to go in, execute their performance, and apprehend these people safely without loss of life to either the police or to the citizens. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Thank God. And then they bring these people out, and what is the standard operating procedure then when you've arrested an individual who is suspected of committing a crime? What do you do with them?
Well, the first thing we want to, get them into custody, properly identify them, positively identify who they are, who we're dealing with. But on those situations, we usually sit them in the back of the police car, identify them, fill out whatever bookend sheet that we need to fill out, and at the detective's request, when it's safe to do so, we'll transport them down to headquarters.
Okay. Do you put someone who has been suspected of being involved in a criminal offense, are they put in handcuffs?
Yes.
All right. Certainly indicating that they are under arrest, right?
Yes.
And when you're under arrest, are you free to leave?
No.
When you're under arrest, are you free to walk around and converse with friends and neighbors?
No.
When you're under arrest, are you allowed to take out your cell phone and start calling people?
No.
Do you, when you make an arrest of somebody, tell them not to say anything?
No, I don't.
Okay. When you arrest somebody, do you say, hey, can I call your attorney for you?
No.
When you arrest somebody, do you want to put, say like you arrest multiple people, do you put them in different vehicles so they can't get their story straight?
We separate them, yes.
Because what you want to do is you want to get them out of an element where they can be impressed or maybe fabricate, right?
Yeah, we try to get them to not come up with the same story. And if we put them in a car together, they might be talking amongst each other and try to say, well, tell them this and I'll tell them this. So try to prevent that.
Right. Because even amongst bad guys, they have people that like them, don't they?
Yes.
And amongst the people that like them, they would like them to get away with crimes. Would you agree?
I agree.
And they may be able to tell them how maybe they can help themselves. Is that right?
Yes.
So you want to sequester. You want to remove those people from possible outside influence. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And Officer Rivera, after you've got the person in handcuffs in a police car, separated from other individuals, do you want to get them down to a detective so that they can be interviewed?
Yes.
And do you want to do that quickly, or do you want to let a lot of time pass before you do that?
I usually act when they tell me to. Like I said before, at the detective's request, we'll take them down.
Sure, I understand that. But let me just ask you this. You've arrested a lot of bad guys over the years, haven't you?
Yes.
Okay. Did you ever arrest a bad guy and say, listen, it's getting close to 5. I'm going to take you out of handcuffs. You just show up at headquarters tomorrow, and if you want to talk, we'll talk to you. Have you ever done anything like that?
No.
Okay. You want to get them down and have them interrogated by a detective as quickly as possible, right?
I don't know about quickly as possible, but sure, if it calls for an interview or an interrogation, then yeah, we'd like to get them interviewed.
Okay. And that's in fact what you guys did this day. You transported those individuals that were arrested down to Dallas Police Department headquarters. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Did you get back down to DPD about 2:30 p.m. in the afternoon with the prisoners?
That's probably accurate.
Okay. So I'd like you to let the ladies and gentlemen of the jury know what happens when you're at DPD and you guys are having to sit on, I apologize, I'm not a Dallas Police Department officer, so if I use language that's not appropriate, I've heard it say sitting on them, is that right?
Yeah, we use that term.
Okay, tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what that means.
Sitting on them, obviously, you're not physically sitting on anyone. You're sitting outside of a door, watching that door wherever the suspect is detained in a room. So basically just watching, making sure no one goes in or out other than the detective.
But you're there also for an important reason too. I mean, if they start acting a fool, you're the person who has to take care of it, right?
Yes.
You remember anything like that happening on the 6th, though?
I don't, no.
Tell me how that works as far as there was 5 of you guys and there were 3 prisoners. What is it that the 5 of you are going to do while the detectives are doing their interview?
Positively ID them, number one. And by that, you're looking up, for us, it's called an AIS system, verifying their identity. It shows pictures, addresses, social security, personal information, just for a way for us to positively say that this is who he's saying he is. Any bookend sheets that need to be done. If the transporting officer is going to do the arrest report, that would be a good time for you to prepare the arrest report. And then other than that, just sitting there, waiting for the detective to do his thing.
If you've got 3 particular persons in the interview room and you've got 5 officers, can you guys rotate? Let officers go to the bathroom, go to the break room,
Yes.
All right. So it can be, would you agree with me or not, it could be a lot of idle time.
Yes.
The accommodations at DPD headquarters, is it a climate control building?
Yes.
Okay. They have break rooms with food and water.
There's a break room. Yes.
I think there's a big TV in the break room too, isn't there?
Yes.
Do the detectives, there's a bunch of detectives that work there, aren't there?
Yes.
And tell me, do you know whether or not a lot of the detectives keep their radio chargers at their desk?
I've seen some. Yes.
Let me just ask you this. If you had a concern about your radio starting to get low on power, is there going to be an ability for you to charge your radio somewhere at the Dallas Police Department headquarters?
Yes.
Okay. Now this, as I understand it, you guys were at DPD, well you weren't, you left, right?
Yes.
Okay. And the 4 other members of the CR team, they remained after that?
Yes.
You and Amber Guyger, you share you guys both are very physically fit people, is that right?
I try to be, yes.
Okay. And Ms. Guyger, she also tries to remain physically healthy and very physically fit.
Yes.
All right. Would you consider her to be, at the time of this particular incident, a very healthy, very fit officer?
Yes.
So after you left, approximately what time did you get home that particular evening?
It could have been just before 6, maybe a little after. I don't remember the exact time, but I would say between 5:30 and 6:30, maybe.
Okay. And what is your phone number?
972-834-5298.
And at the time, did you have Amber Guyger's phone number?
Yes.
Did you guys talk with each other regularly?
Yes.
Did you text each other regularly?
Yes.
Did you and Amber Guyger send Snapchat images to each other?
Yes.
Did you guys send other images through MMS or text messages?
Yes.
Okay, can you tell the jury specifically on or about 9, well let's just use 9/6 specifically, would you send provocative photographs of yourself to Amber Guyger?
Yes.
Would Amber Guyger send provocative photos of herself to you?
Yes.
Were there times where you asked her to send particular photos for you and she would do that?
Yes.
Okay, so this kind of relationship was familiar enough where you guys would send photographs of one another to each other?
Yes.
You and Amber Guyger at some point crossed from just being professional partners, police partners, into an intimate relationship. Is that right?
Yes.
Can you tell me when that happened approximately?
Sometime in 2017. I don't remember the specific date, no.
Okay. And how long did that relationship last?
Um,
The intimate aspect of it.
yeah, maybe the end of 2017. I don't remember for sure.
Okay, you sure that didn't progress well into 2018?
Again, I don't remember. It could have.
Okay. What is... Can I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
Officer Guyger, I'm sorry, Officer Rivera, I'm showing you Officer Guyger's telephone records. If you'd look at this particular line item, number 1818, dated February of 2018, I want you to read this to yourself, okay?
Okay. Okay.
Okay, this is a message from you, correct?
Yes.
And this is a message to Amber Guyger.
Yes.
And again, I don't want you to answer this out loud, but do you understand the context of what you're asking her?
Yes.
Okay. And this was in February of 2018.
Yes.
You were still having a sexual relationship with her well into 2018, isn't that right?
Yes.
So if Mr. Rogers had said in his opening statement that your relationship ended well before 2017, then that's not accurate.
According to that message, no, it's not accurate.
I mean, that was a message from you, isn't it?
Yes, and I don't remember that message, but you just showed it to me, so I'm aware of it now.
Do you remember sending that message?
No, I don't remember sending that message.
Do you remember why you sent that message?
I have a good idea of why I would send something like that, yes.
And that message, again, I'm not going to put it into evidence at this point, but that message would clearly indicate you were having a sexual relationship in February of 2018.
Yes.
All right, I want to take you now to September the 6th. At about 5:55 p.m., did you and Ms. Guyger start exchanging text messages concerning, well, talking about getting together, that particular evening?
Yes.
All right. Your Honor, at this time, I request permission from the court to publish State's Exhibit number 307.
Do I publish it? Officer Rivera,
Yes, ma'am.
that screen should show you the same thing that he's putting above your head.
Thank you.
All right, Officer Rivera, I'm not going to go through all of these. I just want to kind of establish what it might indicate a meeting for later on this particular evening, but just as a preliminary matter, this is the phone number that you told me earlier is your phone number, correct?
Yes.
And Officer Rivera, that is your name, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. This is a sorting of records just dealing with your communications to and from Ms. Guyger.
Okay.
Okay? I want to, if I could, just go down. We're going to go later into the day, okay? 2:54 p.m. At 2:54 p.m., do you recall that being where you guys were at the Dallas Police Department?
Yes.
Okay. So you were sending her images, attachments. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that's going to be an instant message to an application called Snapchat. Is that right?
Yes.
Can you tell me if you can remember what those images were?
No.
Okay. Do you remember if they were provocative images?
I don't remember,
All
no.
right. And then at 5:55 p.m. do you send a text message to Ms. Rivera, or to Ms. Guyger, when can I come over?
Yes.
Does Ms. Guyger reply, you can come over after this? Mm-hmm.
Yes.
All right, does the mm-hmm relate to the Snapchat images? Is that the context in which you understood that to be?
Yes.
Okay. At 5:56 p.m., does Ms. Guyger send you a message asking you if you ended up taking off manana tomorrow?
Yes.
And then at 5:57 p.m., do you indicate, sorry, that last text wasn't for you?
Yes.
And then she writes up yours.
Yes.
And you return, you reply to that JK. What does JK stand for?
Just kidding.
Right. Because clearly that message wasn't for her, correct?
Yes.
Does Ms. Guyger indicate to you super horny today too?
Yes.
This is at 6:01 p.m. Is that right?
Yes.
6:01 p.m. you reply, me too.
Yes.
At 6:03 p.m. Ms. Guyger indicates to you, did like that pic though, that didn't help, got me all wet. Yes?
Yes.
And you reply, like it?
Yes.
She replies, yeah, I want it to look longer. Is that correct?
Yes.
The Snapchat program that you guys utilize, that automatically deletes messages, doesn't it? Deletes the photographs after a certain period of time.
Yes.
Okay. Is that why you guys used it?
That's not why I use it, no.
And at 6:04 p.m., another MMS message, sending of an image. Do you have a recollection of what image you sent to Ms. Guyger at 6:04 p.m.?
No.
Ms. Guyger replies, damn. Is that right?
Yes.
Ms. Guyger then sends another message to you at 6:12 p.m. indicating you're cut nice below the armpits, like that. Is that right?
Yes.
And then there's a lull in conversation from about 6:12 until about 7:59 p.m. At 7:59 p.m., do you check in on Ms. Guyger and ask her how's it going?
Yes.
All right. Is there a particular reason why you were wanting to check in with her, just to get an update on how things are going?
To get an update, yes.
Okay. Is that because you guys had plans later on that evening and you wanted to see where she was at?
No. It was to see if any of the suspects confessed to any of the robberies.
Sure, but you could have called her.
Yes.
You could have texted her.
Yes.
You could have texted Detective Hellenberg.
Correct.
You could have texted Officer Bruce.
Correct.
Corporal Bacon.
That's correct.
Did you check in with all of them about how it was going?
No.
Okay. At 8:04 p.m., does Ms. Guyger indicate to you, good, we just got to jail. Mac has typed in the warrants report, Bruce had to leave for another job. You know who, that's Officer McPherson she's referring to, right?
Yes.
And that's going to be Officer Bruce, that he had to leave for another job, right?
Yes.
So by 8 o'clock, is it pretty clear from her message to you that they have now arrived at the jail and are turning over custody of the prisoners to the Dallas County Sheriff?
Yes.
Okay. And then at 8:05, you indicate that you just finished that meeting, is that right?
Yes.
And she says, how did that go?
Yes.
And so now you guys are going to talk over the 8:09 to 8:14. Look, you went to a scouts meeting, right?
Yes.
Okay. So are you now talking kind of about how that particular meeting went?
Yes.
All right. So I want to kind of relate that back earlier. When you asked her how it's going, if you really meant by how it's going is how was the case transpiring, you could have just sent her messages asking her that like you did here, right?
Are you asking me if would I have sent her a specific question about what's going on, or?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to ask her, instead of just asking her how's it going because you want to impress upon her that you want to know what's going on with the case, you could have just said, hey, what's going on with the 3 guys we arrested, right? Did they give confessions?
That's another way to ask, yes.
Okay. And that's how you guys are communicating about other things like the scouts meeting, correct?
I'm sorry, what was that question?
She's asking you and you're asking her, and you guys are discussing a very specific conversation piece about this scouts meeting, right?
Yeah, it's not very specific, but yeah, we're discussing the scout meeting at 8:09 p.m.
Okay. And then at 8:14 p.m., Ms. Guyger sends you a message indicating she's getting sleepy here, glad that she took off mañana. Is that right?
Yes.
And then there's no conversation between you until 9:14, when again, this is going to be an instant message where, again, it looks like a couple of attachments or photographs are sent. Do you recall what it was that you sent to her at that time?
No.
This was Snapchat? All right, this was a Snapchat app. Do you recall what the images were that you sent to her?
No.
Okay. And then at 9:27 p.m., you ask her still there.
Yes.
Okay. If you've already asked her earlier about how things are going because you're interested, why are you now asking her if she's still there?
See if she's still at work.
Okay. Again, this doesn't have anything to do with the fact that you guys had planned earlier to get together.
Correct.
Okay. And then at 9:29 p.m., she sends you a Snapchat that also includes a text portion of it that says "want to touch." Is that accurate?
Yes.
At 9:33, she indicates to you that she's barely walking out. That's when she's leaving the police station. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then it looks to me again like you sent another MMS text message, an image to her at 9:33 p.m. Do you recall what that image was that you sent to her?
No.
And again, is it going to be, do you have a belief that it was probably yet another provocative photograph?
I'm not sure.
Okay. And then at 9:38, you call her and you begin what is a 16-minute and 44-second conversation with her. Is that accurate, Mr. Rivera?
Yes.
Do you guys often have really 60 minutes and 44 seconds? Is that like the typical length of a telephone conversation that you have with Ms. Guyger?
Usually to and from the gym, yes.
Right. So we pulled all the telephone records, the telephone calls, and would you be surprised to know that there's only a couple of phone calls that were ever substantially long of all the phone calls that y'all had?
Yes, I would be surprised.
Okay. Normally, your calls with Ms. Guyger were fairly short, were they not? 1-2 minutes?
Again, she would be the person that I would call to and from the gym. So when I was on my way to the gym or leaving the gym, that's usually who I would call just to pass time.
And what is your recollection of that conversation that lasted from 9:38:37 until 9:55:21?
To the best of my recollection, remember asking about the suspects to see if they ever confessed. And I really don't remember a whole lot else about the conversation.
Okay. Do you recall that she was driving at the time that you were talking to her?
I assume she was.
And where were you? Did you say that you were just coming from the gym?
Yeah, yes. I believe I was leaving a certain restaurant.
I'm sorry, say that again?
I believe I was leaving a certain restaurant when that phone conversation was happening.
Okay, and where were you going? You were going from the restaurant to where?
Home.
Okay. And had you already been to the gym?
Yes.
Okay, and where is your gym?
It's in Forney,
In Forney, Texas. Where do you live?
Mesquite.
So you'd been up for the same amount of time as Amber Guyger,
Yes,
right? Did you make it home okay?
I did.
Anything unusual happen? I mean, were you so fatigued that you were a danger to people you were dealing with?
No, I was not.
Are you aware of Ms. Guyger pulling off the lane of traffic after she entered her parking garage to engage in this telephone conversation with you?
No.
Was there anything about that telephone conversation that you could remember that was very demanding or required her to stop driving her vehicle so that she could converse with you?
No.
Do you have any explanation as to why she would have pulled off to engage in this telephone conversation with you?
I don't.
So approximately what time do you recall making it home?
If I'm looking at that, I would say just before 10.
Did you notice those texts coming in from Ms. Guyger at 10:02 or 10:03 p.m.?
Yes.
When Ms. Guyger writes to you at 10:02:25, she says, "I need you, hurry." Does that kind of convey to you that she's already expecting you to be going towards her?
No.
How do you read that then?
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, all those messages came in at the same time. So in addition to that and some missed calls that I received, I interpreted it as there was an emergency going on.
I understand that, but she says to you, I need you, hurry. Like, hurry. She doesn't say where to go, so it's, a lot is left unsaid. Like, can you see how that could be read that you already knew where you were supposed to be going?
No.
Okay, and that's not what that means.
No, not at all.
And then at 10:03, she writes to you, "I fucked up." Is that correct?
Yes.
Did you later come to realize that these text messages had been sent to you while she was on the phone with 911?
No, I didn't know that.
When you have been involved in a situation where life-saving measures are required to deal with a citizen, okay? A citizen is dying, and you're the only one there who can help. Are you trained in providing basic emergency care?
Yes.
What is your job if you're the only one there who can render aid? What should you be doing?
Exactly that.
Anything else?
I mean, if you can, try to call for help.
Okay, but you're already on the phone, or you've already let your dispatcher know that you need to have medical personnel and so forth coming to the rescue. Should you be giving 100% of your attention to the person who's dying in front of you, if you can?
Yes, you should.
Should you be sending text messages?
No.
Officer Rivera, in this column to the right of the narrative, all of these red yeses indicate that these messages were deleted off of Amber Guyger's phone. Essentially, the entirety of your conversation on September the 6th with her, well, every single thing on this page had been deleted, and well, pretty much, actually everything was deleted except for timestamps. Do you know, if you know, why Ms. Guyger deleted all of these messages that she had sent and received from you?
No.
She had just been involved in a shooting. You're aware of that, correct?
Yes.
Are sometimes phones seized on an arrest of an individual
Yes.
for evidentiary purposes?
Yes.
That's actually fairly common, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know if it's very common, but it does happen, yes.
Do you know whether or not that concern crossed Ms. Guyger's mind?
I don't.
What about your phone? Did you delete these messages off of you? God bless you. Do these messages still exist on your phone, Officer Rivera?
They don't.
Can you tell the jury why those messages don't exist on your phone?
Several reasons. That's not something that I would want to be reminded of. Speaking of the night, and I don't keep messages saved unless it's of an importance to me.
So your partner was involved in a shooting. You know she's going to be investigated. Now you're telling us that you deleted those messages.
I did.
I'll pass it this.
Officer Rivera, how long have you been a Dallas police officer?
16 years.
And how long in Southeast?
The whole time, since 2002.
And what is, kind of just describe the Southeast sector that you cover as a patrol officer or CRT with Southeast? Is there a wide range of people that you deal with?
Yes. So the geographical area is made up of really 3 areas: South Dallas, Pleasant Grove, and an area just east of Pleasant Grove that we call the Deep Grove. I believe Kleberg Riley is what the old name for it was, but those main 3 areas, we have South Dallas, which is just south of 30. We have Pleasant Grove just east of that, and then, like I said, the Deep Grove is just east of Pleasant Grove.
And a cross-section of all walks of life, is that fair to say?
Yes.
Did you meet Amber Guyger when she was a patrol officer?
I met her once she came to our unit.
After she graduated from the academy, or when she came to CRT?
When she came to the CRT unit.
Were you familiar with her as a hard-working officer?
In CRT, yes.
Did you know about her work ethic prior to coming to CRT?
No.
Generally, do you want officers that you recruit from patrol to be hardworking officers?
Yes.
They can relate to a lot of the different people. You're dealing with sometimes the most violent of the violent. Is that correct?
Yes.
Did Amber Guyger, did she, when you were working with her at CRT, did she respond appropriately to all walks of life?
Yes.
Did she respect others, show empathy and compassion for the people that y'all dealt with?
Yes.
With regard to CRT, just describe a typical day when you're part of the CRT unit.
Well, each day is different. Like I said, a lot of times it depends on the crime trend. It depends on what we've been given that morning in detail. But we usually just go after wanted fugitives, and in between that, we try to help out the complaint load that the narcotics division has. So we'll help and take some of those the street level narcotics complaints.
And so every day is different, but is it fair to say you're in a more of a proactive position than patrol officers? You're not just waiting for calls, you're seeking out hot spots, sources of crime, sources of problems in that part of town.
Yes.
Once Amber joined the CRT unit, you don't really partner up, but you can establish a pattern of riding with 2-mans with each other. Is that correct?
Yes.
And did you regularly ride a 2-man with Amber Guyger?
Quite often, yes.
And some days you might ride a 1-man?
Yes.
Or some days you might partner up with someone else?
Yes.
At some point, you developed a sexual relationship with Amber Guyger, correct?
Yes.
And was it fair to say it got intense and then kind of dropped off?
Yes.
earlier you told me you didn't know when it ended. You thought it might have ended at the end of 2017.
Yes.
But I guess Mr. Hermes showed you something about something that might have occurred in February 2018, correct?
Yes.
In 2018, were y'all having a regular sexual relationship?
No.
Had you ever been to the Southside Flats to her apartment?
No.
Had you ever met her dog Ranger?
No.
So, leading into September of 2018, were y'all having a regular sexual relationship?
No.
On September 6, 2018, well, there's a number of text messages that y'all, that you and Ms. Guyger exchange that are provocative, sexually explicit. Explain to the jurors about that. Why
Explain.
do y'all do that? If you're not having a relationship that's an ongoing sexual relationship, why are you exchanging all these text messages?
Flirting, teasing, mainly, yeah.
On September 6, 2018, was there any intent to go to her apartment that night?
No.
On September 6, 2018, did y'all have a plan that you were going to go over to her apartment and have sexual relations that night?
No.
The text messages that go back and forth, is that just flirting? That it is what it is. There wasn't any motive or anything beyond just what you're sending to each other.
Yes.
So when she sent you the text messages, I need you hurry and I effed up, were you by your phone when that happened, or was your phone in your house, or do you recall?
I was not by my phone, no.
So explain to the jurors, when did you see those text messages and what did you do?
I walked into my bedroom and looked at my phone and saw that I had a few missed calls, and I saw I had a few text messages there as well.
And when you saw I need you hurry and I effed up, what went through your mind?
That something terrible happened.
Not that she really wanted you to come over fast to have a sexual relationship.
No.
Did you talk to her shortly after that? Once you realized the messages, did you have a phone conversation with her?
It was very brief, but yes.
What was her demeanor?
She sounded like she was in a panic.
Was she crying?
I don't remember crying. I just remember her speech was very rapid, talking very fast.
And was this different than you've seen her in high-stress situations when you've arrested, murderers and robbers and child molesters?
Yes.
So you knew from her demeanor and the tone of her voice that something serious had happened.
Yes.
When you had that phone conversation, the 16-minute phone conversation, was there anything about that conversation that sticks out?
No.
Did y'all talk regularly about work, about life, about things?
Yes.
And were from around the time the phone conversation occurred, had you gotten food to go and you were taking it to your house?
Yes.
And you don't live near the Southside Flats, do you?
No.
When those text messages came in, your phone, you said, was in your bedroom, so you weren't getting ready to go anywhere, were you?
No.
Was your plan to stay home that night?
Yes.
Had you planned to take the next day off?
No.
But from the text messages we see, she sent you a text that said she was sleepy and she was glad she took off tomorrow, correct? Mañana.
Yes.
And your normal work week at CRT is Monday through Friday, 8 to 4, correct?
Yes.
And like it's been discussed, there are many times, sometimes outside of your control, where y'all have to work overtime, correct?
Correct.
A lot of it depends on what the different investigative units need and what is immediately necessary to serve the purposes of the Dallas Police Department and protect the public, correct?
Yes.
On September 6th, the first part of the day, was it just kind of normal? You weren't trying to look for anything, any major, you weren't starting any new major operations in that morning because you had a operation to do that afternoon, correct?
Yes.
But that morning you still went around the area and looked for anything, any criminal activity, anything that would require your intervention, correct?
Yes.
And at about 12:30, there's a briefing at Central, correct?
Yes.
And that's done to plan the operation for that day and to describe everybody's role, correct?
Yes.
And CRT's role was provide perimeter, correct?
Yes.
And when you're in that function, you're watching SWAT's back and you're also watching the public's back, so to speak. You don't want anyone coming inside the perimeter, correct?
Correct.
And you don't want, once SWAT hits that house, there's a lot of variables that occur. You don't want anyone coming from there trying to get away, correct?
Correct.
So you are on high alert, definitely, when you're out there at the scene, correct?
Yes.
And then there is a suspect who you end up transporting to the police station, correct?
Yes.
And Mr. Hermes asked you a series of questions about handling suspects. Do you arrest someone that you don't have probable cause that a crime occurred?
No.
That would be unconstitutional, wouldn't it?
Yes.
The people that you arrested and transported to headquarters on September 6, 2018, there was either warrants or it had been conveyed to you there was probable cause to believe that they had committed an aggravated robbery, correct?
Yes.
And so these were suspects who detectives and other officers had conveyed to you, they believed they had probable cause to believe had committed crimes, correct?
Yes.
If an officer said to you, hey, this guy was around, but we don't believe he committed a crime, would you handcuff him?
No.
Would you transport him to headquarters to be interrogated against his will if you don't believe he committed a crime?
No.
When you transport these people down to headquarters, are they forced to submit to an interview, or do they have constitutional rights as well?
No. They can either waive their right or
Invoke their right to remain silent.
yes.
And therefore, they're not interrogated if they choose not to.
Correct.
The Dallas Police Department has, well, let me ask you this. When you're out there on the perimeter, the Southeast Patrol there's different channels that you have on your radio that connect to dispatch in certain areas of the city. Is that correct?
Yes.
For example, Southeast it's called Channel 3, correct?
Yes.
And so if you're in the Southeast sector and you want to communicate with other officers or with Southeast Dispatch, you're on channel 3, correct?
Yes.
Does CRT have their own radio channel when you're conducting operations?
Yes.
And does that channel, when you're communicating on that channel, does that go through dispatch?
No.
That's so you can be in a dedicated channel so that you can communicate about different things that are going on with regard to the operation and not be interrupted by other calls or other interference, correct?
Yes, I should probably back up. I'm not sure if it goes to dispatch or not, but what I can say is it's not monitored by a dispatcher.
Okay. And then SWAT has their own channel, correct?
Yes.
Is that channel 8?
Yes.
So when you're out on the perimeter out there by our LC Fane Higgins, you could be, your radios could be on a channel that would allow you to communicate with each other in CRT or communicate with SWAT, correct?
Yes.
And do you recall after you left the perimeter if you switched your radio, like when you go to headquarters, do you switch your radio to channel 1, or is that something you even think about?
No, I usually stay on 3.
And so if you're over by headquarters and you needed assistance on your radio, it would go through the Southeast dispatch, correct?
Yes.
When you are, you're familiar with the rules and procedures of the Dallas Police Department, of course.
Yes.
So there's procedures when you're responding to a burglary or a burglary alarm call, correct?
Yes.
And when you respond to a burglary call, it's safe to say that you're not standing in the place that's being burglarized when you get dispatched to that call, correct?
Correct.
You're somewhere in the city and you get dispatched and you have the luxury of time to come up with a plan of how to handle that call based on training, policy, and procedure, correct?
Correct.
For instance, if you walked into your home and there was an intruder in your home, would you apply the Dallas Police patrol procedures on responding to a burglary call, or would you apply your immediate need to deal with the immediate threat?
The latter, yes.
So there's a tremendous difference between walking into your own home and confronting an intruder versus having the luxury of being dispatched to a burglary call, correct?
Correct.
And so do you believe it's reasonable for a police officer to, when they're in their own home, and that's when the first time that they realize they're a burglary, to deal with the immediate nature of that call then and there?
Judge, I'm going to object to speculation and invades the province of the jury.
Stand.
You are required to address threats immediately sometimes in your role as a police officer, correct?
Yes.
And you don't always have the luxury of calling for cover, finding concealment, calling SWAT. You have to deal with what's thrust in front of you, correct?
Yes.
I'll pass the witness.
Was there a redirect?
Briefly, Your Honor.
Okay.
Proceed.
Yes, please.
With respect to the radio, Officer Rivera, your radios are programmable, correct?
Yes.
And Whether you working southeast on Channel 3, if you want, you could change it to Channel 1 Patrol, Channel 2 Patrol, Channel 3 Patrol, Channel 4 Patrol. I mean, these radios can be changed to different patrol channels, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And it's not difficult, right? Is it turning a knob or pushing a button?
Correct.
Okay. And again, Miss Guyger had a take-home radio, did she not?
Yes.
Just like you.
Yes.
And presumably, unless there was something wrong with that radio, she could have called out for help over that radio, is that correct?
Yes.
And even if she was on Channel 3, which is the Southeast Patrol radio station, is that right?
Yes.
If a police officer calls out and says, what is it you guys call an officer assist, a signal 15?
Yes.
Okay. If Officer Guyger or you or any other member of the Dallas Police Department put out an officer assist call, you would think that the Southeast dispatcher would be able to get people on in Central in any other part of the city, isn't that right?
Correct.
I mean, y'all are not so disconnected that if an officer needs backup, it's not going to be that complicated if you put out a distress call over a radio.
If you're on one of the main 7 channels, yes.
Right. And even if you're not, say for example you're on a top channel or some other kind of channel, you can, through the twist of, I'm an old man, okay? I remember when police radios, you would tune it with a little knob. But I've looked at y'all's radios now with a bunch of buttons. Is it just a matter of turning a knob or pushing a button and you can go to pretty much any channel that you want?
Yes.
And when a signal 15 comes out, when an officer says that they need assistance, that is the most premier, paramount call in police culture, in the police community, isn't it?
Yes.
You're going to stop anything you're doing and you're going to go to assist an officer, are you not?
Yes.
Are you aware in this case that officers responded after the dispatcher received Ms. Guyger's call that she made on her telephone, that there were officers on scene within 2 minutes? Were you aware of that?
No.
Because it was a signal 15, wasn't it?
Yes.
It had been made into a signal 15. Did you tell Mr. Rogers, did you agree with Mr. Rogers that Ms. Guyger had the utmost empathy, compassion, and respect for people of all backgrounds?
Yes.
Is that what is that the message you were conveying to
Well,
the jury?
I mean, I would object. My question was the people that she dealt with at Southeast that they arrested and the victims that they dealt with. That was my question, Judge.
Your Honor, may we approach the bench?
Yes.